Hey guys, this is episode 7 of Coach Talks. Now, both myself and Joe have been busy-ish, but we've had a break, but hopefully we'll get back into a consistent routine of podcasting. So I think we're going to do a little bit of an update on ourselves as usual, followed by kind of covering topics about getting back into the gym. I know that's not something that it's not something that is happening yet. But it's definitely something that we should probably be thinking about, probably something you already are thinking about, just going over a few things you should definitely consider. Do you want to do a little update on yourself?
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's been what, 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that since our last one. I know obviously you've been busy revising with exams and stuff. I have not. There's obviously nothing I can do exam wise, or level 2, everything's done up until the practical exam for that. So all that sort of stuff has been put on hold, obviously. Over the last few weeks, I've sort of just cracked on with my own sort of stuff. That's the major priority for the last couple of weeks has been my Hadrian's Wall Challenge, which I finished 2 days ago. So that was 145 kilometers in May, or by the end of May, for Macmillan Cancer Support, which is the donation finishes tomorrow. So by the time this video is live, all the money will have been, withdrawn and sent to Macmillan, which is cool. I did my last one, my longest run actually yet, which was 11K the other day. And to be honest, it was actually quite easy. Like no real issues whatsoever there. So over the last sort of month, my fitness has definitely gone through the roof, because especially my cardiovascular fitness. Because I remember the first few days, sort of, I was, after the 5Ks that I was doing, I didn't want to get out of bed the next day. My legs hurt so bad. I'm not a big cardio person, or I wasn't. I definitely do enjoy it a lot more, and I will look to do more challenges like that for charity. I think my next one, sort of, I will be swapping the bike, the trainers for the bike, and I'll get out on my road bike a little bit more, because I prefer that kind of cardio. And I have got a challenge in mind, which will be cool to see. But apart from that, I think, to be honest, nothing much has gone on. I've burnt my face because it's been beautiful weather here, and my back as well. Yeah, it's been pretty standard. Weight hasn't really changed. I've actually stopped tracking my weight as much, so I'm only tracking it sort of once, twice a week now, compared to what I was tracking every day before. And I'm still not tracking any food, which is a nice break. And I don't think it's that necessary, especially when my cardiovascular fitness has gone through the roof.
Yeah, and I think obviously your goals have changed, so tracking to the macro is not as necessary anymore.
No, 100%.
Um, I've been revising for exams. It's been a bit of a stressful, emotional week or two, but hopefully things are getting better now. I've definitely had ups and downs just in terms of training motivation, which is obviously something we've covered on the channel before, but something I think we'll go into again today, just in a slightly different aspect, obviously returning to the gym. I'm still training, definitely been having more days off just to be able to recover better. But yeah, like Joe said, it's been glorious here. So every session has been out in the sun, which has been very, very nice. Okay, so getting back into the gym is something we don't know a time scale of when it might occur yet, but hopefully soon. And it's definitely something that you should plan ahead. If you can get it all planned, ready to go, then you don't have to worry about anything as much kind of once you get in. So you have a physical kind of preparation you should do, which is potentially going to be through programming. How are you going to program when you get back into the gym? Are you just going to go kind of balls to the wall? Or are you going to take a bit more of an eased approach, maybe lower intensities? I think we're going to cover that just briefly. And then I think we're going to touch on kind of the psychological preparation you may need to do in terms of internal and external motivators. And it's definitely something that has been affected or may have been affected during this period. And obviously being in a completely different scenario at a gym again, it's going to be quite foreign to some people. So preparing yourself in a way psychologically is definitely going to help. It's definitely going to be a key thing to prepare for.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something that we focus on quite heavily today, especially from the standpoint that it is almost like starting fresh in a gym aspect, even in if as a work aspect. You know, for the people that have been furloughed, they're going back, they're seeing their colleagues for the first time. It's exactly the same in the gym. You're going up, you're picking up bits of equipment for the first time again. So I think that's going to be weighing heavily on a lot of people's minds. So I think, you know, the psychological as well as the physical, the psychological is going to be a very important factor when we look at returning to the gym.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just go straight to that kind of programming side. They're like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm gonna max out my deadlift, little things like that. Well, not little things, but things which probably aren't the most sensible thing to do. And unfortunately, I think most of us generally know we shouldn't be going full on when we get back. However, some people will. I think it's just outlining the key aspects that you should be aware of today. So start with training. Obviously, depending on the training style that you do, whether you are doing cardio, if you are I think we'll generally focus on resistance training because that is something that people can't do as much at home. Cardio, other things like that are obviously a little bit more accessible given the circumstance, but getting back into resistance training with machines, things that you haven't used in a very long time, or even just heavier weights. You may have some weights, but just not as much as you may want. But I think as an overall statement, start low. In terms of volume, which is sets times reps times weight, that aspect of volume being the amount of work that you are doing, you should start very low. If we are doing, say, a leg day, and you've got maybe a squat, a leg extension, a hamstring curl, maybe some walking lunges, start very low. Start with 1 to 2 sets at a lower intensity. Potentially, if you are someone like myself who likes to train to failure, and maybe I don't even had access to bands or dumbbells, then potentially going to starting at a lower intensity. So when you get back to using a bar, using very heavy weights, if your muscles may be used to it, they may have actually had that activation and that stimulus throughout. However, the load that you are placing upon your body in terms of potentially your joints as well. And I think from a technical standpoint, if you're performing these movements that you haven't performed in 2, 3, maybe even 4 months, you're not going to be as good at them as you used to be. And that's obviously going to bring some increased risks of error. And if you are throwing a lot of weight on and you have that error, you could get injured.
Yeah, I think, you know, you say that's bang on the money. You know, with the whole, you know, you're not going to be as good as the movements. You know, those movement patterns, it's not going to be hard to relearn them. You know, you will relearn them quickly, and you will be able to sort of increase your intensity and increase your volume steadily over the weeks. You know that it's not going to be tough for you. It might be tough for you to hold back, but you know, for those that might be a bit confused straight off the bat for what we're saying to reduce intensity, to reduce overall volume, it's incredibly easy to do, especially in the gym environment. All you would do is take your program from before. Say you might even be training that current program at home with resistant bands, just changing a few movements. You take that program, you go into the gym, say you're doing 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps, you then drop that down to 2 sets of 12 to 15 reps. Or if we're looking at decreasing intensity, we could use a RIR system. So we could use reps in reserve. We could train to, you know, 3-4 reps in reserve. That just drops that intensity down. So we're not training all the way to that complete balls to the wall. I can't lift this. This is going to choke me to death failure. Um, and that's all we mean by saying, reduce the intensity. We don't mean go in and do 3 sets of 20 with a 5 kilo weight when you know you can lift 100. We just mean drop it down slightly, so you can work your way back into that environment.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also from that technical standpoint, if you do want to get better at those movements, potentially you are a powerlifter or you want to get back into competing, or just some movements aren't as good as you'd like them to be, you can obviously increase the frequency that you do those movements. Potentially before, you're only doing them once a week. If you bump that up to twice a week, obviously taking into consideration your fatigue. So for example, you were doing 3 sets of squats, or 3 or 4 sets of squats on one day of the week, and then you'd repeat it the next week. If you wanted to get better at that technically, potentially you'd pull back the intensity, the load, a little bit more than we are suggesting, and then you could split that across 2 sessions, which will, it's just like riding a bike. You do it more often, you're going to get better at it technically. So as long as you're not fatiguing yourself too much, you are recovering from session to session, I think increasing the frequency is definitely going to be something that may be beneficial for getting back to those kind of movement patterns.
Yeah, 100%. Just to talk actually a little bit about programming, what would you recommend when returning to the gym? Someone who maybe has been training throughout this lockdown period, but maybe just with resistance bands. I know what I would sort of say to them. What would you recommend for their actual program when they return back to the gym? Would you say change it completely, or sort of, what would you say?
I think keep it similar. You definitely need to, I think you should focus on that one, say maybe one compound per session. Have that one big compound that you are going to focus on. Maybe it's a bit more technically demanding. So take a leg day, maybe a stiff leg deadlift. I'm sure not many people have enough weight for a proper stiff leg deadlift. It's not the same with bands. And it's a very challenging movement. There's actually a lot of technique that goes behind it to make it kind of efficient as a movement, for you to be able to get a good stimulus out of it and to be able to lift a lot of weight. So focusing on that one compound, potentially having lower sets, or maybe a higher set, maybe instead of doing just those two lower intensity sets, maybe, like I said, bringing the intensity down a bit more and having, say, 3 sets and really just focusing on that technique. That could be something you do. Maybe looking at, so yeah, obviously once you've done that one compound, I think then going into much more stable movements, like machines, after that, I think is a very good way to go about it. And like I said, again, keeping it simple, keeping it very short, maybe just on a leg session, 4 or 5 movements, that's it. You might want a compound, like a squat, followed by an extension and a curl, and then maybe like a walking lunge at the end, which is another compound. But something as simple as that, just to get you going in the first few weeks. You can then see where you are from there. How is your body responding? Are you really, really sore every session? If so, maybe you don't want to increase anything yet. Maybe you just want to carry on as you are, because you can definitely, there's nothing that is preventing you from making the gains with that lower volume approach. There's definitely a lot of people that can build muscle, build strength on a lower set approach.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I pretty much follow the same thought, pattern process. I would say, take what, if you have been training, take what your current training program, and as you return to the gym, I would keep those movement patterns similar. So say on a push day, your first exercise is, or say upper body day, for example, because it's easier to get a variety, and say your first movement's been a weighted press up, and that's a very similar movement pattern to a bench press or a dumbbell press, your flat press. You may be able to switch that in, take the lower volume approach, take the lower intensity approach, and work your way up. If after a week, 2 weeks, that's feeling quite good, you're responding to it well, then bump up the weight, bump up the intensity, etc. If then your second movement, has been a pull up at home, you could switch that for a lat pull down and do exactly the same. So I would keep the basic movement patterns of your training at home exactly the same for the first 1, 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then after that you can start adding in what I guess will be termed as novel stimulus, because you haven't done them for a good few months. So if you haven't been doing lateral raises or things like that, you can then add them in once you're more adapted to sort of being back in the gym environment.
Yeah, that's really good there. Anything else we need to cover on kind of the physical preparation in the gym?
I don't think so. I think the main thing to just let everyone know is is making sure you don't jump in all guns blazing and go in, do a 1 rep max bench, do a squat bench deadlift session, and completely blow yourself out the water for the following day, and actually not be able to get out of bed the next day.
The following day, more like week.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people that would do that. As soon as I go back to work, all of you, like most of you guys that will listen, know I work in a gym. As soon as I go back, I know I'm going to go up there and I will see people on the bench press doing a 1 rep max, which, given the circumstances that people think will have to return to the gym in, isn't the smartest idea when you can't train with someone else. I know that will happen, and they're not going to come back for 3 or 4 days because they're not going to be able to get out of bed.
Yeah, so it's just getting that kind of the physical preparation in terms of programming, and just having the mindset that actually it's going to be a slower process. You've been away for a very long time, so you shouldn't expect to perform the way you did. Potentially expect to perform worse. Expect kind of lower. If you have lower expectations, then you can kind of go in with a more sensible approach and then build on that as the weeks get by.
Yeah.
In terms of a psychological point of view, the psychological preparation you need, I think a lot of us will have experienced some sort of anxiety during lockdown, whether that's just through uncertainties of the job or training. Just everyone has experienced some sort of stress. Maybe not being able to train in the way you want has caused you to be stressed. Maybe not being able to train at all, being stuck inside, that has caused the stress. So I think when you are going back into the gym, obviously seeing other people and being in a completely new, not a new environment, you've been in that environment before, but going back to somewhere where there is that element of, say, social comparison, those aspects of training are definitely overlooked by many, but it's definitely very important, especially for beginners, I think.
Yeah, just quickly before we dive in, you touched on, well, you didn't touch on it. You said it not necessarily a new environment. I just like to, I think it will be a new environment. I think it will be a completely new environment, because especially for the first maybe up to 6 months, I've seen online documents from, I think it's Europe Health or Health Active or somewhere like that. I can't remember the name exactly. They're talking about returning to the gym, and obviously gyms are going to, everyone seems to think the gyms will have booking slots returning after sort of this coronavirus period. And I think that too. But they're then talking about, limited gym numbers and only letting in one person per 15 square meters, or 15 meters squared, sorry. So it will be a new environment in the sense that people that were training together before, then they'll be able to be in the gym at the same time, but they're not going to be able to train with the same people. They won't be able to have spotters, they won't be able to have things like that. So in a sense that you're not necessarily going back to a new environment, it's a new way of working in that environment. You understand?
Yeah.
So that will bring a whole different load of stresses and things like that on board as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously it's still very, that's a possibility that could happen. And I think different places around the world are going to have different takes on the situation, and they'll do different things. But yeah, I think touching on motivation, I know we've covered it in the past, but I think looking at internal and external motivation currently, and also kind of going back into the gym. For those of you who don't know, internal motivation would be things such as wanting to perform better, having kind of that internal, the internal goal of maybe you're doing the movements for the enjoyment. I know currently in lockdown, I have enjoyed, my training has been that enjoyment. Speaking of people getting stressed, people use training as a method to relieve stress, as something they do because they enjoy it. So that internal motivation side to train to enjoy may actually be diminished a little bit if we are having to go back to those environments. Like you said, they're not the same as before. You're expecting to go back to this, oh yeah, we're gonna have the best gym session when we go back. Well, actually, it's probably going to be a bit disappointing. Going to get back and we're not going to be able to do everything that we want, and it may annoy some people. Switching over to external motivation, now that is going to be things like if you are training with maybe a competition in mind, that is going to be your external motivator, something outside of something that is making you want to do other things. So yeah, having that external stimulus such as a competition, maybe looking good for other people. That's something that's very common. You may say, oh yeah, I want to get healthy, but there's always a little bit of an element of social comparison where people just want to look that little bit better for other people, not just themselves. And I think, yeah, so that's definitely something that needs to be considered as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you know, internal, external motivators, they're going to be, I think in this topic, in this section of this podcast, we're definitely going to dive into, you know, our own experiences, our experiences in the past, you know, how we've reclaimed motivation, etc. But I think programming is going to be incredibly important when we return to the gym. Obviously, you've touched on what external and internal motivators are. Programming is going to be important, but the actual physical motivation, not on the day, not that week, not even that month, but actually when you get into your programming, returning to the gym, the motivation side of things, that's when it's going to really kick in. That's when you're going to realize, I'm not going to be able to train with someone else for 3 months. I'm not going to be able to lift this weight for, you know, a couple of months. I'm not going to be where I was at before. If you're not then prepared to sort of feel that demotivation, I think you're going to struggle to regain your motivation a lot more. So at the mental side, you know, whether it's external, internal, your motivation is going to overpower the programming topic. I think, personally, I think when we all return to the gym.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you have the best program in the world, the best coach, maybe not coach, sorry, but you have a program, you've set it out. If you don't have the motivation you can't be consistent with the program. And if you're not doing the program, you're not going to get the results you want. So making sure that you have, I think, more internal motivators are going to be a more positive thing. They're not influenced by other things. If you're doing it just for the enjoyment, then you're going to want to do it because it makes you feel good. Whereas if you're doing it because you want to lift more than someone else, or kind of it's more of an ego thing, you don't want your ego to kind of be bashed. You don't want to look like you're weaker than you were before. It's going to happen. Everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah.
But like you said, not being able to train with someone else, that is a huge motivator for some people. They don't go to the gym unless they're going with someone else, unless their friend encourages them to go with them. And if you don't have that, what are you going to do? So I think definitely focusing on why do you exercise? And I think I'm going to quickly delve into kind of my personal experiences.
Yeah, you do.
And obviously in terms of the training motivation, I've done powerlifting, I've done some bodybuilding training, and the motivators behind my training decisions was mainly because of the enjoyment. I really enjoy doing that style of training. But I think while I'm in the gym environment, there are other people, and I think that is not, without me knowing it, really more of a subconscious thing. It is an external motivator for me. I look at other people and I think, yeah, I want to do better than him, or I want to lift better than him, or I want to, that kind of thing. And it's not something that is on the top of my mind. I don't go into every gym session and say, I need to get a massive pump to look bigger than everyone else. Or I need to load up as heavy weight every time so everybody thinks I'm super strong. That's not what my mind goes through, but it is an aspect, whether that's your main focus or not. And it has had an impact on me during this kind of lockdown. I've been training, I've got equipment, thank goodness for that. But the element of that kind of external motivator to do better than others, there's no one around me. It's just me, and I have to train, I have to push myself. I'm not just trying to make myself. I know a lot of people, they might do a really hard set and just kind of a few extra grunts make the last rep look really, really hard, and everyone's like, oh, he's working really, really hard, he's training so hard, wow. You can't, there's no point faking it if you're at home. No one's seeing it. Obviously you can record stuff, you can send it to other people, but it's not the same. So you really do get an understanding of where your motivations lie, because that external factor is almost completely gone. So it's all kind of relying on those internal motivations of enjoyment, and just kind of self-development in a sense. That's kind of one of the things I'm doing. But yeah, obviously goals change because of those motivations. I know your kind of training has changed, whether that's because you've got bored or just your motivations have changed. I don't know.
100%. No, I'm going to touch on that. I will touch on that now, just because that for me, that in a personal way, that follows on nicely from where you've sort of just ended your explanation. So for me, training has always been it's always been enjoyable. I've always loved it. No matter what sort of training it's been, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's cardiovascular, whether I've trained interval training for things like rugby, football. Now I've done a lot of sports in my time, so I've done a bit of training for all of those sports. Training has always been enjoyable, no matter what it's been. I just love it. So finding bodybuilding, finding powerlifting, resistance training in general, sort of that overpowered everything for me for the last, well, I don't know how long it's been, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That sort of training has overtaken everything. Now, sort of in recent, that has potentially been because I've had people around me that have been like, in the gym, it's been motivation. You can lift this, you can do this next week, you can look that way in 3 weeks time. You can, whatever goal it's been, there's been people there that are in the same situation, that are in the same environment, and they're doing that too. Now, as we've come into lockdown, obviously I'm going to talk about a change in training, because mine has changed drastically. Don't get me wrong, I still love resistance training. I still love being resistance, like training with my resistance bands. The kit I have got, I still use it. I still love being in the gym, etc. But I have recently really, really been enjoying my cardiovascular training, as I've really been enjoying my running during this challenge. And I think for the foreseeable future, my training will change. My goals of competing in bodybuilding, pardon me, aren't necessarily over, but they have been put on the back burner a lot, because for this past month, I've been running minimum 5K a day. You know, as bad as it sounds, I haven't had a rest day in 9 days. Yesterday was my first rest day, and I've taken another one today. But not I didn't want to. Well, yeah, not that I didn't need to. It was because I didn't want to. I've just been really enjoying it, and on the side, you know, I've raised some money for a great charity. So I think I'm definitely going to look into, in the future, doing more training based around cycling, running, and cardiovascular training. And then every few months, you know, I'll put myself on almost like a self-competition. So as Joel was talking about, it's an internal motivator and an external motivator. I would place that as both, because for me, I know that then if I'm raising money for a charity and I say, you know what, I'm going to cycle this far in this month, and I want to raise this much money for this charity. That's like, for me, that's an internal motivator that I have to do that for this charity, but also an external motivator as the charity's getting something out of it. And I'm sort of doing good in that sort of way. So like I said, for the foreseeable future, I'll be training that way. But that's sort of how my motivation has swung, I guess, over the last few weeks.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned there was a bit of both, and it definitely is. Obviously having that that goal of, I want to meet, say, 5K a day. That's in terms of your running, you're doing 5K a day. That's an internal motivation. It's almost kind of that mastery of a task. You really want to you need to get good at it before you can kind of do it lots. So that's your internal motivation. But then obviously your external motivation is that that kind of the number and the charity. You are working towards something else. But obviously that is quite a good external motivator. It's not necessarily going to be a damaging external motivator. Some people have, say, damaging types of external motivation. Like I said before, kind of the social comparison. There's so much of it on social media, kind of the fat shaming kind of stuff. A lot of people get into training because of, say, fat shaming. People don't like the way they look, or they don't like the way they look anymore because of comments that people may have had. I don't think it's anything that is going to change drastically. I think it's something that just happens, unfortunately.
That is this industry. That's where this industry is flawed. That's where the fitness industry is messed up, because people on Instagram will look for the six pack. They look for the shredded delts. They look for, you know, straight glutes, whatnot. I don't look, at the moment, I weigh 84 kilos. My body fat's probably somewhere between 15 and 18, I reckon, maybe. I don't look the fittest. I don't look the best, but I could get up tomorrow and run a half marathon, or even further. And, you know, I might be battered afterwards, but I could do it. So it's just, that's where people in this industry, they don't see the other side of things. You know, if you're constantly on Instagram going, oh, this guy's got six pack, this guy's got, you know, a massive chest, this guy's got massive legs, and then you sort of think, I don't, that's going to bring a whole different kind of demotivation, or it's more demoralizing than anything, which will affect your motivation.
Yeah, 100%. And just linking back to my exam I did last week, actually, there was problematic internet usage. It's essentially that is a term covering just being on the internet when you don't need to. So just scrolling through Instagram when you're bored, that kind of thing, when there's no intent behind why you are searching. If you're on Instagram to get educated through multiple different pages, brilliant. If you're on it to get motivation, or if there's a goal behind what you are doing, brilliant. But there comes problems when you are just kind of scrolling randomly, trying to just kind of just pass time. It does lead to lower body satisfaction. People, it's almost, you get more involved with the industry as it is, kind of the social norms of just people like this, people don't like that, and you will start to compare yourself. It's something I've been doing. It's something, thankfully, doing this exam, doing the revision for it has made me more aware that I am doing it. I've had Instagram breaks, just delete things, have a little break, see how it affects you, come back to it when you feel better, things like that. It sounds maybe a little bit dramatic to delete something, Instagram, Facebook, that kind of thing,
Good way
but
to,
it helps. And I think just having that intent behind what you are doing on social media is definitely useful. I think if you go on to even going away from the fitness industry, just like a personal Instagram, what's your intent behind going on that? Do you want to see what other people are doing? Or like you need to have the right kind of intentions behind the actions that you take. Otherwise it can lead to a lot of issues.
yeah, I mean, you said that sounds dramatic, but it's, in a way, it's not. It's, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. It is that way. And a lot of people, a lot of like big people take these Instagram breaks and they won't be on social media, but they'll still scroll through Facebook every day. They just won't post anything. That's not a social media break. That's still, if you're scrolling through Instagram, you're still seeing everyone's posts. You're just not posting anything. And actually deleting something like that, or even if you scale it all the way back and you're looking at your own physique and you're looking at like a picture from 8 summers ago that you look ridiculously lean in, and you're looking at it pretty much every day going, you know what, I could look like this. I looked like this one day. If you delete that picture, out of sight, out of mind, like, you're going to feel a lot better for it. And clearly it works because that's something that's helped you, through this exam period. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think for anyone, if you are just getting caught up on these issues, if you are constantly comparing yourself to others, just get rid of it. It may be something, I know, especially from a bodybuilding aspect. Obviously, you are still involved in that industry, as well as myself, and you definitely see it a lot on social media. I'm always just kind of on social media. I have the education side of things, brilliant. And I really do enjoy getting kind of looking at posts, seeing what I can learn, maybe training posts, what I can implement into my own training. But kind of there goes to the problem when I go, this guy, like I look at competitors, for example. Obviously you said you're holding back when you're kind of competing. And it's always the question of, am I big enough yet? Do I look good enough? Like, and I don't think that question will ever be answered. You never will be satisfied with the way that you look. Just the general consensus of things that, like the training and all of this external motivation to look better, to be more aesthetic for others, is always a factor. And I definitely think it prevents us from doing things such as competing in bodybuilding if you want to. I think some people who state that you shouldn't compete like in something like that unless you want to win, I think there's a problem behind that. I think there's definitely places for people to just compete if they want to compete.
yeah,
And obviously bodybuilding as a specific area, there are health issues with a prep if you do it well, or at least if you do it well in terms of a bodybuilding aspect. Getting very, very lean, there are health issues with that. However, if you aren't actually kind of motivated enough to get to that point, like going through that process, experiencing it, giving it a shot, is going to be better than not giving it a shot, because you will quickly find out if you have the motivation, if you have the drive to actually complete something like that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. I'm going to say something that I guess it will probably call out, I guess, a lot of big time social media influencers, but people that say you shouldn't compete if you don't want to win are wrong. That's that is a load of bullshit. That's completely wrong. If you want to, the phrase that they should be using is, you shouldn't compete if you're not prepared. So if you're not prepared to suffer, because that is what it will put, that's what you'll go through. You know, you'll go through the extreme hunger, you'll go through extreme emotional changes, because you're getting extremely lean. So if you're not prepared for that, then you shouldn't compete. That's something that has always played on my mind with competing. You know, whether I'm ready for that or not. However, you know, if you, so say you want to compete next year, 2021, you're going to set a date, say July 28th, you're going to do PCA, whatever. That's an end goal. That's a date that's finalized. If you've entered it, that is an end goal. You cannot change that date. Then your internal motivation is through the roof because you have to hit that goal. If you get to the day and you start maybe pumping up and looking at other competitors and you're like, you know what, I've got a chance to win here, then that's some external motivation for when you're on stage. If you're starting to look at other competitors and be like, yeah, they might beat me, you then remember that you're not there to win first place. You're there to push your body to its absolute limit. And you're there to do your very best. You know, whether that's placing 8th or 1st, you're there and you know you haven't had a refeed day or a cheat meal in 8 weeks. You know you haven't had a burger in 32 weeks. It's like you have to look back and look at the goals you've already achieved during that period, and you can say, you know what, I don't give a shit whether I come dead last or whether I come first. I have achieved something.
Yeah, and that's obviously just getting your mind in the right place. If you are constantly it is that extra. I think from my point of view, wanting to compete, I've actually looked at it as, do I want to compete or do I just want to do the things that people like I aspire to? I look at people on social media and I think, I love what you do. I love your personality. I love your training style. I love kind of just who you are as a person. And you compete. So maybe I enjoy the personality. I enjoy the training. Oh, I enjoy the training as well. Maybe I'll enjoy the competing. And you can associate the two things together. You're just going along that kind of trend of, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, he's done. Why not? Why can't I do it? Sort of thing.
Yeah. But going back to the gym, obviously that was a massive. I don't know if that's a massive detour. I think it's definitely worth touching on.
It was good information. Yeah. I think everything we've just mentioned is worth, worth what it is. It's worth listening to. It's worth being mentioned.
I think just overall, you just need to take other perspectives of your training. If you think you're prepared, you just need to look at why you are motivated. I think when you are stuck in the process of just training in and out and you're almost distracting yourself from the real reason why you are training, you need to find that real reason, the reason you train. If it is for other people, you're probably not going to be consistent. And if you are, I'm sure there are going to be some kind of mental impacts that will play on you if you are constantly in this competition against others without them even knowing it. But yeah, finding that kind of internal motivation for your reason why. And I think that reason why should come from within. It should be enjoyment or a development of yourself. The challenge, if you enjoy setting yourself a challenge, and potentially sometimes I see a few people that do resistance training and then they see maybe an Olympic lift, you see a clean and jerk and they think, oh, that's so cool. Like, how can such a small person lift such a massive amount of weight? And that's obviously, it is an internal motivator to be able to get better at a movement. The mastery of a task is something that a lot of people enjoy to do. Riding a bike is when you can ride a bike. Obviously, I'm sure that's quite a long time ago for most people, but you get a massive enjoyment out of it once you're able to do it. And I think just that constant ability to self-improve is definitely the reason I do things. I do want to get better at performing movements, at pushing my body's limits. And I think having an external motivator is okay at times, but it's not something you should rely on.
I completely agree. So just to sort of summarize this podcast into, you know, short couple of minutes. Number one, programming. You know, make sure you've got your programming in order when you return to the gym. Do not go in all guns blazing, because you will feel it the following week. If you run straight into the gym and do your squat, bench, deadlift session, whatever, don't do that. Start low, drop your volume, drop your intensity all the way down, and then most importantly, I would sort your motivation out. So sort your internal motivation out is going to be your number one priority, and then subconsciously there will be external motivation. There will be external motivators when you get back to the gym, that you don't even think about. You just consider them as motivators. So this guy's lifting this much, you know, I could be there in a couple of weeks, etc. But before you go back in, definitely consider your why, and then train. Just get back to it. I think that's a pretty nice little summary of what we've just spoken about.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously just understanding that internal motivation is probably the area you should focus on. That is going to be your why. However, you can use external motivation. It's just being wary of the fact that it can develop to some nasty habits, some nasty issues. So just being aware of your reasons why, and just kind of understanding if that's a healthy association you should have with your exercise program, for example.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, have you got anything else to say? Should we wrap it up there?
I don't think so. I'm pretty much done.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there then for today, guys. If you did enjoy this one, please drop it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You know, we'll now sort of Joel's exams and stuff are over, and I'm sort of got a lot more free time, etc. We'll be trying to, you know, bust these out once a week, minimum sort of thing. And then I appreciate we've rambled on a little bit today, but there's been some good topics in there. So like I said, if you have enjoyed it, just give it a thumbs up, and if you have any topics you'd like us to discuss in the future, drop them in the box below, and we will see you guys next week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye.